Hey guys, it's Phil. Just I can't say enough how nice it was to see you guys last week. So I was stoked to see you guys. A little dismayed at how much pressure you feel. For whatever it's worth, I honestly think you're a super talented group, and I don't think you really are going to have anything to worry about. A couple of things. One is make sure you send me your resumes. I've gotten a couple of them. I've gotten 3 to be exact. All of them look brilliant. So keep sending them so I can help out. I also have a friend at NIMI who graciously has kind of volunteered to look over resumes as well. So so she's got an HRI, doesn't necessarily understand all the content, but will understand the HR part of it. So, so definitely get me your resumes, and I will make sure that she, she looks at it and all that kind of good stuff. Okay. The other thing is, while I'm in here, let me go back for a second because I had the notes open. But if you look at here, I've posted. Okay, so a couple of you weren't in class, but I'm basically making the omni-channel assignment an omni-channel assignment. So I'm going to omni-channel all your courses. I only have one group as of this recording tonight. It's Wednesday night. I only have one group, so if everybody else can send me your group breakouts and who your retailers are. If you have specifics, please give me specifics. So the Amazon group, my first question was, are you doing Amazon.com, .ca? Because those things will matter as we go through the assignment. But please send me your groups and send me the retailer that you're working on. I think there was 1 or 2 people that wanted to do this individually, which is no problem. Just again, send me a note so I know. And then we'll do this. A couple of things here. So one is this first check-in, I think, is proper. Yeah, the first one should be proper. I think that's right, but I'm not sure. So if that's during your break week, somebody let me know and I'll adjust it to the week after. But what I'm looking for is what I'm looking for is the ability to, for you guys to send me an update on where you are, and then I just want to come in and have a chat with you guys so I understand where you're going and all those sort of things. The assignment is here. I will just open it. I think it's very straightforward. It's what we talked about. It's an omni-channel exercise. I'd like you to build a SWOT for the retailer that you've chosen or that you're working on in your CRM class. Create a recommendation path to success, highlight risks, and suggest a mitigation strategy. So I've got check-in dates, as I said here. So here, I want you to go and figure out what the narrative is. So, if you're thinking about a retailer, let's take a. I will take I'm pulling a blank for retailers. Let's take Longo's, for example. So Longo's is a great local grocery store. Does compete a little bit online with Grocery Gateway. They have focused on their in-store experience. They have a superior in-store experience. Bar very, very few other retailers that are doing as well as they are. And so what I would kind of cull from everything that I'm doing in all your other courses is think about, what does a Longo's do to make sure that from an omni-channel perspective, they are equipped to move forward? What is it that they can do that makes them better? What makes them, where should they be leaning? This is intentionally broad because the world is going to be like this. When you get handed projects to do, or you'd like to be able to move yourself up in your world, you're going to have to take pieces of everything that you're doing in your life and figure out what it means. Okay. The other thing I did is I just thought of Longo's, but really what I did is I went after REI as well. So I have an example here from REI. This is actually a presentation by the REI folks. about how they started to think about their SWOT and things that they need to do from in general as a retailer. So I'm not looking for a 4 Ps discussion out of you. I really am looking for an omni-channel strength, opportunity, weakness, threats. And then I'm looking for a mitigation strategy. So I've left an example in here. Hopefully this makes a ton of sense. If it does not, please reach out and I'll explain it to you. I would like to be able to see you populate slides like this. So if you wanted to mimic this, I'm cool with it, but I'm also free format. So if there's another way that you can deliver that is coherent for you guys, please do that. Again, mirroring real world. This is kind of how things are. You build, based on what you need, right? You format your information the way you need it to tell your story. So anyway, they've kind of walked their way through this. I want to be able to see slides like this, risk and mitigation. What happens, and then how do you change that? How do you adjust your strategies? What will be a threat to the strategy that you have? And you're almost there. Okay, we're week 6. That's not intended to make you panic. I believe in you guys. You guys will make it. And I'm very excited for you. So send me resumes, do this assignment, and we'll get there. Okay? Now, today, I think will be interesting, even though it sounds not interesting, because the material in here is, some of it is pretty detailed and some of it is not. Where I'm going to go first before I get into things like digital marketing, which you guys know a ton about now, is I'm going to talk about the actual infrastructure, because infrastructure, or IT, information technology, it's going to be an adjustment for you guys. I think some of you have worked in organizations before, so you'll understand this. For those of you who have not, it is going to continue to get in your way. And there's kind of a whole reason for it. So before you get to back-end interoperability and front-end, what I'm going to do is here, I've got a lot of stuff going on. So before I get there, the reasons that you're going to have issues with this, I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. One is you guys come from an age where, okay, let's see if I can do this kind of without struggling too much. There I am. Okay, so the infrastructure systems or information technology that's set up in the world today is relatively archaic by your standards, okay? And that's not an old fogey thing. It's just the way it is. Implementation of the first things you need to understand is when all of these legacy systems were put in play, there was no cloud, okay? And you may or may not appreciate how difficult that is, but no cloud means, imagine if I sent an Excel file to all 18 or 19 of you and said, can you please edit this file and send it back to me? So, or can you please make revisions properly and then send it to each other? And so you can imagine if you didn't have the cloud, if you only had email, you got to figure out how to coordinate 18 people putting stuff into one Excel sheet, not a Google sheet, but an Excel sheet. That's the kind of, that's the world that we lived in before the cloud, okay? So without cloud, the information structures that we have are old. The way they keep records, the way they transmit records, there's a whole, there's protocol on how things get done, and that turns into process. It turns into something that you guys are not so used to, so repositories. I'm going to say share drive, and you'll know who worked in an organization because they'll start giggling. You know, and so all of these things are kind of products of the old world. As you guys step into the world, your issue is going to be you're going to bring cloud computing, right? But with that, you're going to bring security concerns. And so you're going to want to keep IT people close and keep them educated because they're going to be worried about security. All of the data hacks that you hear about come because people think they're using the cloud or they think they're doing the right thing on the cloud. So you're going to have to balance out cloud and security to make sure that you're doing the right thing. You're going to worry about, these people are going to worry about revisions. And by revisions, I mean versions of files. So think of that. If I sent an email out with one Excel file and I said, y'all have lines in here, y'all have to fill this in and send it back to me, you would all worry about, gosh, like if I fill this and I send it back, how do I know that my lines are going to get into the master document? And so forth, okay? And so, you know, versions and revisions you're going to worry about on this IT structure, this formal IT structure is going to worry about because it's all point in time. You're not, because your stuff is real time. And you're going to struggle with applications because there's going to be a lot of things that, you know, organizations are used to implementing. You're going to hear this. You know, and so if you wonder why things take a long time, I'm going to walk you through why with all these funky diagrams. Hopefully nobody's peeking over there, but it's going to make you barf a little bit. I won't lie. But, you know, it's a different world, I guess is what I'm trying to get to, is because of the way software was built before and the way it rolled out, it's a totally different world. Your world is faster, more mobile, possibly a tiny bit less secure, depending on what kind of applications you're after. But you're going to have to deal with an organization that is trying to move from trying to keep this because it would have invested a lot of money in this while trying to do this and trying to adapt these so you can move faster. Okay, so you're kind of stepping into a as you get into bigger organizations, you're going to have lots of issues about how this works and how you do this, okay? At any given time, you know I'm around. You can ask me. I probably one of my biggest jobs is bridging old to new, translating traditional to new. So I can help you with this, okay? So let me get into this and kind of show you how this is different and what's going to cause you pain along the way. So quite simply, that diagram, where is I scrolled too far over. There we go. Okay, so this diagram here, this, come on, click. There we go. So this diagram here, is pretty simplistic. And so this piece here, you know, it's a great bubble, but you know, we went through Product Master and you kind of got a sense of how complicated that is. This structure, you know, this bubble is very simple. When you start looking at how things break out, you're gonna start to run into you know, things that you're going to have to really think about and understand the structure for. And so, you know, where do I start with where do I start with you know, where do I start with this diagram? I think you start here. So you start here, you know, with an ERP system, enterprise resource planning system, and this can be. I'm gonna just make that blue a little bit thinner here, otherwise I'm gonna run out of space. Okay, so if you start here with back office systems, right? This is infrastructure. So this is servers. This is you know, walls for firewalls, that sort of thing. The ERP system, you know, if you think of Product Master, the other things that an organization needs to function, because now you have to think bigger than you. You have to think, accounting, right? So finance makes companies run. So accounting software is going to be there. HR software is going to be in there. You've got your product master. You've got shipping, logistics, and then you also have sales, or really order management. You've got order management, and then you've got, I'm missing something in here. Sales, order management, customer service, or actually customer retention, so CRM. Okay, so all of these things kind of fit. With Product Master, it fits, and kind of falls in this world, and that's going to be housed in this, an ERP system. So an enterprise. So get used to the word enterprise. Anytime that you want to do big company stuff, you call it enterprise. Enterprise resource planning tool. And so if you've worked in other companies or not, SAP is one of these, Oracle is one of these. If you're in an older company, AS400, and there's, kind of the list goes on and on and on, but these are probably the top 3 that I would kind of think about. You don't, my advice to you is you don't want to think about any of these. In fact, just know the names and know that, if you need them, the company will train you on them. To give you an example of how different this is, if you've ever heard of, I don't know if you guys have heard of Asana. If you haven't, check it out. It's a marketing planning tool or marketing deployment tool that helps you produce content and track what's happening with it. Asana can be rolled out to your organization in about 3 hours, maybe less. Okay, SAP and Oracle to roll out to an organization takes about 2 years, and it takes approximately 30% of your workforce. Helping to plan out what all these fields are, what do they look like, what navigational inputs you have, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so when you walk into organizations, you're going to have ERP systems. You're going to have all of this kind of stuff that leads you to, there's a service provider here, so don't worry about this. The service provider is the one who kind of powers and enables these ERP systems. You're going to use that to get your e-commerce structure out there. So this is, if you have a .ca.com version, it would be here. That feeds from, ERP. And then here in-store infrastructure. So the store will have a server. It'll have a POS system, so the in-store computer. It'll have an ePOS, so a handheld, like a Telzon unit. And then it'll have a wireless transmitter, so it can send all that information back here. That can send it back to the ERP system. And then obviously head office gets tapped into this as well. And so kind of what we were talking about in terms of how you went to market kind of shows up here too now, because now you're looking at these going, these systems aren't connected, right? So that structure we talked about, look at this, right? These are, I guess that doesn't matter, but the e-commerce structure and store structure are separated, and then business unit and administration from store structure is also separated. And so when you're in this spot, it makes it pretty difficult, it makes it pretty difficult to get things done, right? So this is kind of what I was talking about last week, but now you can see it in graphical format. Now, I'm going to make your brain hurt a little bit. I apologize, but it is kind of necessary to see how some of this stuff works. I'm not going to get into all of it because not all of it is relevant, but if I kind of show you how this works. So when you look at ERP systems, here are some more, right? So this is a more in-depth version of what you saw there. You've got kind of this infrastructure. So if I break down ERPs even farther, you've got SAP, Microsoft, SAS, Platfora, Tableau is in here, right? So, you know, single view consumer platforms and all those sort of things. Your data repositories are here. It can be an enterprise resource planning tool. It can, you're going to add customer retention management in here. You're going to look at how these process information, how they conduit back and forth, and then how they tie into everything else that you have going on. Now, all of these aren't, you don't need to know the names of all this stuff. But what you do need to know is all of this information as it feeds also needs, these are repositories, right, that people have figured out. They need an interface that works. And then you need security, and then you need operations. Now, the other terms here to know, so EDW is electronic data warehouse, okay? So data warehousing is where you actually hold all the tiny little bits of data. CRM, you know, ERP, you know now. And then the last one is a relational database management system. And that kind of keeps everything tied together. So the challenge with all of these is, like, so each one of these, you can see why now cloud structure and apps are you know, so happily embraced, right? Because the infrastructure behind this requires enormous resources. It requires full-time work of you know, a lot of people, right? Because even the relationship between a data warehouse, so an ERP, you know, will house its records inside an EDW. But that now you have a database system, so now you've got to make sure that your ERP talks properly to your EDW. You've got to make sure that when you send your CRM information in there, that you also have a relational table so that your ERP understands your customers, and then your EDW also understands that too. And then, you know, your relational is almost the key or the translator that helps all of these guys talk to each other. And so you know, think of that Excel sheet. If I just gave you the instructions of, hey, you know, all 18 of you put your stuff in here, you know, you'd have questions around, what fields do you want me to put in first? Like, we can't do this willy-nilly. We've all got to follow the right codes. We've got to follow the right way, because otherwise, you know, for anyone who's an Excel geek out there, you know, building Excel, you know, VLOOKUPs, HLOOKUPs, relational databases, pivot tables requires you to do a mini version of this. You know, so going in there, if you look from traditional sources, is, you know, again, customer management, ERP, stores, you know, transactions, POS transactions, the product catalog that we talked about last time, inventory levels, web transactions, staffing plans, all of these go in here, so that it can be housed in here properly, so that you can start to pull it and be able to do things with this. The things where you guys play in a lot of that are new, but you can see that it's a bit broken because we don't actually, the truth is no retailer really knows how to house this stuff properly. Social media, anything in-store, beacons you want to be able to do. In-store Wi-Fi logs is huge right now because they have no idea what to do with it, and yet they know that they hold customer records in place, and so if they don't do it properly, you know, this one can be a source of security. This could be a whole scandal right in itself. And so they're worried about all of this stuff. So they figure, how do we do this? How do we make things happen? Okay. So it's a complicated structure. But it is something I wanted to show you because you really, you have to understand that this is going to be, I would say that for you guys, you know, you're all worried about jobs. You're worried about how you're going to be able to do, whether you're going to be able to live up to the task. I would say your biggest adjustment is going to be getting into a structure where you're going to be asked for things that may or may not make sense to you. And you want to think about where they go and what they're used for. You know, anytime that you get, here's a pro tip for you. anytime that you get a form that you have to fill in, and there's a regimented process, that says, hey, you got to do this form, then this form, then this form, and trust me, you will have these. Your first question should be, where do they go? So I understand the relationship between the forms, because the chances are you are stuck somewhere here, and so the requirement for you to fill in a form is because one satisfies this, one satisfies that, one satisfies that, and so anytime you can learn about that helps you draw a picture of what this ecosystem looks like, which is going to help you figure out where and when you can add apps, you can add applications, and not really worry about somebody freaking out on you because you've done something bad. Okay, so I would definitely think through some of that stuff as you get to some of that stuff. Now, the reason you need to understand that too, because in omnichannel, the one struggle, where are all my diagrams? There they are. What we want to get to in omnichannel is not so much cloud, but things that allow us to be able to do more. If you're thinking about data and information as marketers, we really want to be able to do more. And we want to be able to do it faster, right? Because as you can imagine, if you haven't guessed already, working through the structure that I just scribbled all over above, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of forms. It's a lot of people you've got to enable. But if you learn where everything goes, you'll start to figure out how you can get to some of this stuff. And this is infrastructure in itself, right? So as you implement, you're going to have to think about where do you tie all of these pieces together so you can start to think about all of this stuff. Okay, so here you've got a retail store, which is really cool. Everything from the warehouse, goes to cloud, which is great. Maybe some of that happens now. So you get real-time tracking on everything. Hopefully you're sitting here, cushy headquarters. That's what everyone calls headquarters. If you don't live in headquarters, you call it cushy headquarters, even though it's probably not that cushy. But what you want to be able to get is accurate in-store inventory. So this is a big one. So Walmart is one of the biggest retailers in the world. They have one of the most sophisticated POS systems on the planet. They have one of the biggest databases for information outside of the FBI, CIA, and they struggle with in-store inventory. They can tell you what you sold by hour, but they can't always tell you what's on their shelf because they don't know. And so this is something that everyone wants. If you're hearing things like, as you get into the industry and you hear RFID, RFID tags is all about this. It's how can I tell where it is, and how can I get, a real-time inventory? Because as a retailer, every piece of product I have moving through this whole chain costs me money. And so the less I have moving, or the more I have flying off my shelf, the better I am. Okay. The other pieces that you'll have to worry about from an infrastructure is things like getting data on shoppers. We can collect it now. We know how to do that. There are companies that actually track. I'm going to ruin this diagram by putting a little door in here. Me and my drawings, right? I think the door would go here. I might have, yeah, anyway, whatever. You get it. Oh, wow, I just wrecked it. Anyway, okay, so when we know all sorts of things now, but some of it's limited by privacy because we're worried about, how secure is this? How secure are these lines of communication back and forth? And then how secure is this? And the truth is, it's usually this one that's the bad one. But we know all sorts of things about people who come through the door, who leave our doors. We know a lot of stuff about what happens down the aisles. This is your consumer pathway, which you've already done work on. In the project, you should think about this is if you have an in-store, what are the flaws, right? So you've done the work, so I don't want you to draw me a path. I don't need a map or anything like that. What I do want you to think about is, the data that you start to see happening in stores from all this infrastructure helps to tell you a lot of things. And so I'll be looking for you to tell me, look, you know what? Like the data tells us that they're not in all these places. Like these back. I will tell you now that if this were the back row of a grocery store, we already know this. We know something like 35% of people never make it to the back. They never get from here to there. And so you'll see that. You'll actually see retailers pull the product that's here at the back and try and merchandise it here at the front, just because they know that they won't head to the back. I'm getting distracted because I like the retailing part, but from an infrastructure perspective, some of your challenges as marketers is going to be how do I collect this data from these points that are tracking all these people in my wonderful store? How do I use them here so I can figure out what's next, so I can dream about what I can do without violating somebody's privacy? That's going to be a real trick for you. Infrastructure is a complicated thing, right? As marketers, we want to know as much as we can about our consumers, but this is going to be a real problem. Okay. Now, the other pieces here, because we're in a new retail environment, you are digital marketers. What you're also worried about that we don't know how to store data on, that you'll have to work with IT on IS is, if I do stuff I start drawing a web page, and this is going to suck, but if I start doing socials, if I just start doing digital stuff, I've done that wrong. Let's see if I can. Come on, mouse. There we go. Really want what I really want to say is, so what happens if here I drive Instagram, okay, or I drive Snap? If Snap really has a future, or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, okay, Twitter. Now, what happens if I do stuff on there and I drive that person into the store? How do I track that information here on this POS system? How do I make this connection happen? If you want to be successful as a digital marketer, if you're gonna work, whether you work for a retailer or you work for a brand, always think about how that works. This concept, you're gonna do it. I have no doubts that each one of you are going to figure out what are the best strategies, how do I drive a consumer, how do I make a consumer happy, all of those sort of things. What's going to make you prolific is you thinking through and making the connection, because I guarantee you right now brands don't know how to do this, is how do I take this, what's happening here, when they come into store, how do I track that here? How do I make this happen so that when this POS register gets that information, I get it here and I get a, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. Okay? That is one of those things. I mean, this is the whole point of the infrastructure is, how do you start incorporating this stuff in here? The other thing, just as a commentary, I think, because I don't know if any of you are interested in that or not. I don't know if you could tell, right? Like this, different color. There we go. Come on, color. And so here, this section is the, kind of warehouse space at the back. as you drive more of this and more e-commerce, this is going to be challenged. You know, and the square profit per square foot here is going to be a big equation. Okay, just because as we warehouse more, if the trend continues and people order online, you don't. To my comment earlier about the back row, if you notice at Best Buy started this. They've now moved it to the front of store, but they had exactly in this back 30 space, they had the you know, order online, come back here and get it, because they were using the warehouse space at the back for e-commerce. Okay, and so you're most likely as marketers in your lifetime going to engage in a discussion where you talk about, is this space big enough? Should we just do this with it and turn this into warehouse space and make the retail, true retail space in store smaller, because I can do more here, I can do more here, I can make this space more efficient and make this number go up. Okay. You know, again, we talked about this last time about how online and stores, and I just showed you how the infrastructure isn't set up. You're going to have to be thinking about that stuff. You're going to be working with ITIS, which they're not used to either, so you're going to have to get used to each other. But you're going to wind up having to sort that stuff out because it's going to lead you to these discussions. Okay? So I you know, I looked at this and this topic for me, I was kind of like, oh, I can't believe I got to do this. But the truth is, it's fundamental to, you know, it's actually fundamental to all the jobs you're going to have now, because this whole legacy system thing really it's a thing, and it's a thing that is going to continue to come up. It's going to continue to rise. It's going to continue to be something because companies have invested so much money and they understood how these systems work. There's an entire infrastructure behind them. You're going to keep running into these issues. Sorry, I'm a little bit distracted on this, but I'll finish the thought. Is even as you guys get into organizations, if you think of the number of steps that we had there, you're going to run into this in your career, because you're going to get to these places where, if you think of your life now, you are a immediate feedback sort of culture. We are an immediate feedback sort of culture. And you guys have been raised on applications that, programs, things that have given you immediate feedback. So if you have an Airbnb, somebody tells you right away whether they're interested in the place. They tell you right away how, you know, how much it is, how nice it is. If they rent out your place, they give you a rating when they're done, and they do it immediately. Uber is the same. Amazon's the same. eBay, if you're old enough to be on eBay, we're all like that. It's the feedback is immediate, right? It's you did great, thank you very much, move on. The companies you're walking into, unless you're going to like smaller, more immediate, like more modern companies, is going to be similar to legacy systems where, you know, where feedback comes slow and rewards also come slow. And it's not necessarily because they're trying to rob you of an opportunity or anything like that. They are going to be there because you've got to think like this legacy system. So all these legacy systems and the way they're set up, you know, is kind of what you're going to be walking through from a career perspective. Hopefully this makes sense, or shoot me a note and I can explain it more. But the way these systems are set up it's very much going to be reflective of your career as well, in these places, because you've got to go through all these steps. Okay, so enough of that. Onto this diagram. In this situation, I really, what I wanted to show you really was the you know, this is the utopia we all want to get to, right? We all want to be able to do all of these different things where you as a consumer, you know, you can track where the delivery is. You can, when home deliveries happen. You know, you can sell somebody a product in their car. Wireless point of sale, which is starting to happen now. You've got interactive kiosks. You've got wireless cashiers. All of these sort of things they're a product of that infrastructure that you have from before. And it's in order to get here to this infrastructure, you've got to wrap your head around all of that other stuff, all of this stuff, and all of, unfortunately, this stuff, because this is the stuff that's really going to get you there. Understanding all of this means that you're going to be able to get what you need done. Okay, so the last part of the discussion is kind of laughable. Because we've been through all of this before. So I don't know that I'm going to take you through all of this. I think what you have to think about is, as you go through these and you start doing these programs, so SEO, SEM, when you start driving people to store or to the website, the thing you've got to remember with SEO and SEM is, as you're driving traffic to any of these, applications, what you're gonna wind up doing here. So let's say you run SEO, SEM, you're doing a great job of it, and your e-commerce is firing. What you need to do is, in the old world system, you're gonna have to be able to tell the ERP system, which is where your forecasts are, that your sales are going up. That's how things tie, right? Because ERP is a forecasting system, so ERP would, from here, if you're a retailer and you sell a lot of stuff, you're sending a call out, you're sending an order out to a vendor. And vendors have timelines, they have shipping dates, all that kind of stuff. And so as you do promotions, as you do SEO, SEM, if you think it's going to have a dramatic effect, you're going to have to build a forecast for it and put it in the system so that people can, know and react, and your vendors can react. There's kind of like a whole, wag the tail here effect that's going on. So, I think that's where this ties. I just don't know that he's done a very good job of explaining that here, or the implications of it. Social media has less implications on that, but it does have implications on your CRM. So anything that you track either through Facebook, if you can use Facebook IDs to tie everything down, you're going to want to tie that back to your CRM system. Anything that goes into your website, subscriber style, Zendesk stuff, when they ask you questions, you want to figure out how to tie those back to your CRM. The more you can track, the better. But again, that means working with IT and infrastructure to make sure you get that to happen. Affiliate marketing, probably the most disconnected of all of these. You can do it. I don't know, unless you've got this rockin' affiliate program that affects your inventory levels. I think the effects will be fairly negligible. Sorry, I can't speak today. The other one, email marketing, goes back to CRM as well. And then this one has an interesting effect as well on your... it doesn't do so much with data stuff, but you are going to get into like service provider stuff with email marketing, because you're going to wind up emailing a lot. You're going to wind up taxing these systems. Google is going to want to know what you're doing, so they don't. Ugh. Anyway, you know what I mean. Google is going to want to know so that you don't get spam, right, or whitelisted or blacklisted. Those sort of things. So all of that you've got to think about along the way, and then think about the implications that come to back office and IT when it comes to that stuff. I think that's all from me today. Hopefully this was interesting. It actually is very interesting. I don't want you guys to be afraid, because now I've given you all this kind of crippling technology stuff that you're you're going to all have to worry about. But I do think it's important to know it's definitely something to embrace so that you you kind of know how to move forward. Okay, so any questions, please let me know. Reminder, please tell me what your groups are and your retailers are. And then I will see you at the end of the month. Okay, keep the resumes coming. I really love seeing them, and I'll start forwarding them to wherever I can. All right, thanks. See you guys next week. Bye. Or talk to you next week. Bye.